So I think we'll go ahead and get started. Can everybody hear me okay from right here? Yeah, good. Can we see everything look good? All right, very good. Thank you guys. We'll let a few people trickle in here, but I want to go ahead and get started. First of all, thank you so much for joining me on this presentation. I know there's a lot of good content out there, so I just appreciate you choosing to come spend a few minutes with me, and hopefully we'll have a good time. So my name is DeShawn Brown. I am the CEO and founder of Coworks. Coworks, we're going to talk about that a little bit later, but we are a software platform for co-working spaces, entrepreneur centers, shared lab spaces, maker spaces. So we help these centers all around the world, actually, UK, Canada, US, France, Germany. We help all of these centers do a few things. One, sort of handle operations of the space through our software platform, everything from scheduling and booking to payments and managing your members, but also the community side. So giving all of your people in your centers a tool that they can use to engage with you, engage with the space, engage with each other. So we'll talk about that as well. But today, what we're going to do is we're going to talk about some of the lessons that I learned and that we've learned working with co-working spaces all over the world, and then working with entrepreneur centers, and how there were some takeaways from co-working that we can apply at the entrepreneur center level. So there's some few keys that hopefully you'll get here in the presentation, some themes. So how many people here are running a space, operating a space on campus, or have an entrepreneur center? All right, everybody. Okay, good. We've got the right audience. So again, I'm DeShawn Brown. I'm the founder of Coworks. I'm an entrepreneur. I'm a tech guy. And once upon a time, I was also a student. So that's baby DeShawn. So that is me, believe it or not. And this was me at graduation. So I'm from North Carolina. I went to NC State University out in Raleigh. Got some Wolfpack people in here. And so I studied computer science at NC State. But I think most importantly, I'm actually a product of all of the programs that you guys are doing right now. Meaning I went through an Entrepreneur Center program as a student. And it kind of shaped who I am today. So my freshman year at NC State, I accidentally took a class called EI 201, Intro to Entrepreneurship, with Jennifer Capps at NC State. To be honest, I just needed to fill an interdisciplinary study requirement, and I saw entrepreneurship. I didn't know much about it. Had good reviews from the teacher, and I said, good enough for me. So I took the class not thinking it was going to really have a big impact. But it did, because it introduced me to entrepreneurship, because I didn't really know anything about that. I certainly didn't know what that looks like as a career, especially as a 18-year-old. And it also introduced me to the resources that NC State had on campus, which I also had no idea about. One, because I was a freshman, but two, because I think everyone in this room can agree, it's a challenge to get across the university all the content and resources that you have available to your students at large, and specifically the entrepreneur students. So that class achieved both of those things for me, and I'm really glad it did, because it sort of helped me on my journey, which we'll talk about now. So this is the journey, and so we're going to kind of use this journey. I feel like the best way for me to sort of share these takeaways is to just share my story and my experience. So started off at NC State Entrepreneurship, again, baby DeShawn that we just saw. And through that, I learned about entrepreneurship, and I fell in love with it, and I thought, you know what, this seems pretty fun. This feels like a career that I would want to pursue. I was always good at math and science, but I was also like a theater kid, so I liked the creative aspect, and I was always looking for what was the medium that could blend the two. And entrepreneurship kind of did that for me, as well as computer science. So I started my first company, Lithios, while I was a student at NC State in the E-Center, soaking up those resources, nascent, albeit that they were at the time. And so Lithios is a software company that I started and founded. We started off just building silly apps in our little entrepreneur center, and I use little emphasis on that because at the time it was a space that's maybe about the size of this room. and we had a whiteboard and a 3D printer and one office, 2 couches, and then another bigger whiteboard. And that was our Entrepreneur Center. And so I think Haley referred to it one time as the closet, which I agree. It was very small. But it was our space. And I felt really cool. I was like, this is, nobody knew about it except for me and like the other random entrepreneurs, students who had kind of stumbled onto it. So I fell in love with it. I brought my friends. We ended up kind of building companies. A lot of my peers were there as well. They've gone on to build companies, raise money, do a lot of stuff. So early days. Started that. So we'll fast forward a little bit because we'll tell the story a little bit more. But eventually I did have to graduate, and they kicked me out. And so I needed a place to go. So at this point, my business was going pretty well. We'd kind of bootstrapped that business, started off working with startups. Now we're working with Fortune 500 companies. We developed a skill set for building mobile apps. Turns out companies needed that skill set, and they were willing to pay us to do that. So we ended up building software platforms for a lot of big companies. So we were growing, we needed space, and that experience that I had at that Garage 1.0 is what it was called, our little Entrepreneur Center. It was the first version of the Garage. I wanted that back. Even though it was just a small little space with me and a couple of friends, I was like, this feels like a good way to work. It was very inspiring. So as an adult, post-college, I was like, how do I find this space in the real world? And that led me to coworking. So Raleigh Founded, this is a co-working space in Raleigh. It's the biggest co-working space in Raleigh. This was kind of the perfect match for me. So we actually tried our own office a couple of times, and I quickly learned I was responsible for the furniture, I was responsible for the Wi-Fi, I was responsible for everybody's problems in the space, and I was like, I would prefer to work on the business and not the space. And so co-working was kind of that milestone. So getting through the circle here, when we got into the co-working world, this is kind of early days, and we'll talk about timelines. I met Jess Porta, who's the director of Raleigh Founded at the time, and I just had a really hard time getting in front of Jess. Everybody loved Jess. She was amazing, but she never had time. And I was just like, why is this? And we quickly learned that there's a lot that goes into running a co-working space. It's sort of doing tours and sales and doing hospitality and doing service and doing content. And we'll talk about a lot of these things. But what I realized was there was an opportunity here for some systems that could help these people get back to actually building community and not sort of getting lost in the operations of doing a million things in a co-working space. And that's what led to Coworks. That's what we're doing today. That's why we're here today. This is my current company. And so we built Coworks to provide a solution for people who are providing these types of co-working, collaborative, innovation space, which led to then Garage 2.0 becoming a customer of Coworks to manage that space. So that's the story. So now let's kind of dig into the details. So first of all, what is co-working? Hopefully everyone here knows what co-working is. You've probably at least heard about big spaces like WeWork or Industrious or something like that, but co-working is all around us, it's all over the world, and most of it, 80% of it, is not the big box chains that you've read about. It's local people in your community, whether they be real estate professionals or community builders or startups or entrepreneurs in their own right, building space for the startup community. So you can see here through the last 6 years or so, co-working has really exploded as far as usage around the world. But generally, just kind of defining co-working, we're talking about a collaborative workspace. Generally, they offer desks, offices, open co-working memberships, access to resources, access to content, and access to a community. And the community is key. Again, it's been growing in popularity. It's still largely made up of small businesses, entrepreneurs, innovators. So what's happened is, as co-working has grown and expanded, it's started to become the foundation of the innovation economy, of the entrepreneurship economy. So you can kind of see a little bit of breakdown now, but really new startups and small businesses largely are the big fuel for co-working spaces, and what we believe co-working is the future of work, and especially post-COVID. So we launched in around 2016, 17-ish. So we've kind of seen how things have changed, and especially now, people are drawn to this type of workspace. They want something that's flexible, something that's on their own terms, something that's turnkey, and also something that allows them to see humans again, because working from home is great and we love it, but it's not necessarily great for everyone every day. So co-working is kind of that solution for allowing people to get that collaborative workspace, get that ideation and innovation, and get that people-to-people interaction. And this is why startups, small businesses, fast-growing companies are flocking to these spaces. So, as we've grown at Coworks, we've had the pleasure to serve spaces all over the world, all different shapes and sizes, from the small mom and pop 2,000 square foot space to the 100,000 square foot commercial co-working operation. And as we've kind of used our tool to help them be successful, we've kind of learned some key takeaways of what are the kind of pillars that makes a successful co-working space, beyond just, of course, using our software, but what have we seen in patterns as far as the ones that have really grown and scaled? So we're gonna do a couple of case studies here, but these are the three keys, right? Community and culture, analytics and automation, and public and private partnerships. The spaces that we've seen really grow and become real pillars of their communities are the ones that kind of follow these keys to success. And so we're going to talk about how you can apply these three keys in your entrepreneur centers to have the same success. And that's really the beauty of what we've discovered at Coworks as we've expanded and started with co-working and moved to makerspace and entrepreneur centers and shared labs, is these keys translate across all of them, because really what we're doing is we're providing that innovation space, which is really, really important. All right, so let's take Raleigh Founded. This is a co-working space that we're based out of. So we got to travel all the way back in time to 2012, when they used to be called HQ Raleigh. At the time, they had one location. You can see 10 years later, they now have 6 locations, all in Raleigh, so they've grown and expanded. And if we kind of look over here, this is kind of where we came into the picture. So we were there when they had the one space. So go rewind back to, I'm starting my first company. I'm trying to get in touch with Jess. She's got one location. What I didn't know is they were scaling and they were trying to open up another business, or another location. And they had a waiting list of 200 people. So they already had the interest and the demand, but she's stressed, right? She's like, yeah, I don't know if we're gonna make this work. And I just couldn't understand why, right? And that's when we dug into all of the challenges of actually keeping these spaces going, regardless of the demand. And even if you do have a lot of interest, how do you scale it? So that's kind of when we were able to get in, and just to kind of talk about that a little bit. They already had key number one, the community and culture. So Raleigh Founded, they were fortunate that they had a pretty good cult following. I mentioned they had a 200-person waiting list. That's really, really hard to do. A lot of you in this room are probably just, that might be problem number one. How do we get people interested in the space? And we can talk about that too. But they were doing a lot of things right already before we came into the picture. And this is really comes down to programming, right? So every single week, multiple events going on over at the co-working space, open to the public. So whether that be happy hours, lunch and learns, pitch startup competitions, all those kind of things. They made a concerted effort to make sure that from day one, they became a pillar in the community, right? Not just in their space for their members, but for all the local businesses around them, for all the other schools in the area. They wanted to be, again, because they're housing entrepreneurs, they're housing people who are doing really, really cool stuff. So all they really had to do was just say, hey, people, let's tell everyone else what you're doing because it's pretty cool. So they were doing this really well, or doing this pretty efficiently, had these different events and programmings, but behind the scenes, it was a nightmare. So spreadsheets, Google Calendar, QuickBooks, PayPal, Slack, software. And so even though they had good demand, even though they had a pretty good community, their operations was a nightmare. So here's Jess, and this isn't a condoning Jess, or this isn't making fun of Jess or anything. She was great. In fact, everyone loved Jess, but she's one human being, right? And so how do you take one human and scale that to 6 locations? Now they have thousands of members. At the time, they only had a couple hundred. So this is what I saw on the software brain of mine as something we could help with, at least, because they had a broken system, a bunch of different things. They didn't talk to each other. They didn't communicate with each other. And there was no real playbook to copy and paste across locations and really get her time back to do what she's good at, which is work with the entrepreneurs. So that's where we came in. This is Coworks. So again, our system is really about how do we provide a kind of all-in-one solution to be the source of truth for your member CRM, your community engagement and events, your reservations and your bookings, and streamlining the stuff that the software can do so that the people have more time to do what the people can do, which is building that community, delivering that content, really educating and growing the entrepreneurs or the startups in the community. So from there, so now they have community. Now they have pillar number 2, which is the analytics and the automations. And then number 3, they were also doing this really well as well. So they had partnerships, and one of their key partnerships was with universities. And at the time, I didn't really understand, but now I see this was really, really strategic on their part. So 3 universities that are all kind of in the downtown Raleigh area, Campbell, Meredith, NC State, and they were all partnering with HQ Raleigh at the time in different formats. Campbell had they have a law school in Raleigh, and they had space in the center, in the co-working space, so that all the members could go talk to the Campbell Law students, get some advice, do some internships. The Campbell Law people could go to the co-working space, connect with startups, start to understand what kind of legal problems do they have, and really get some real world experience. And they were also partnering with NC State, and we're going to talk about that specifically. So, as HQ Raleigh was growing from their 1 to then 6 locations, at the exact same time, NC State's entrepreneur program and Entrepreneur Center was kind of doing the same parallel growth. Now, I didn't see it all at the time, but when we looked back, there was this really interesting parallel thread. So if we travel back to 2012, again, Garage 1.0, so that's baby DeShawn building Lithios in the closet, and then transformed to now Garage 2.0, which is a 25,000 square foot full-on co-working facility, makerspace, student entrepreneur center, small businesses are able to get space there as well. So how did they do it, right? So this is kind of when we came into the picture at Garage 1.5. So I'll kind of talk about the first couple. So Garage 1.0, that's us in this kind of nobody knows about it center. It was our own little private, entrepreneur club. E-Clinic, this is a partnership with HQ Raleigh, going back to that partnerships. NC State actually established a program called the E-Clinic where they took space at the co-working space and had actual student classes held in the co-working space called the E-Clinic. So these are entrepreneur classes. Students got off campus and got that enrichment to say, hey, this is what an innovation space looks like. This is what an entrepreneur center looks like. So again, back to those partnerships. That then evolved into what I call the Garage 1.5, which was moving from that small space to the bottom floor of an actual student housing development on campus called the Entrepreneur Village, which allowed us to go from one little tiny space to a bunch of rooms, and it was kind of a retrofitted student housing hall that turned into a collaborative space. So if we transport there, here's slightly older baby DeShawn and in the Garage 1.5 space. So this is us building the early days of Lithios. You can see one of the dorms was kind of turned into like a makerspace, and now we had more room, we had more space, there's more companies, we're cooking, right? But again, behind the scenes, more problems. So insert Haley, who's also here today, and so hopefully she can help me with any questions you guys have. She's, at the time, was the director of the Garage, now in this awesome 1.5 space. And what I didn't know is that they had plans to scale as well. And turns out it's easier said than done. But there was a lot of challenges, including how do you get ROI and prove ROI to the stakeholders? How can you scale the operations? Because everyone loves Haley, she's amazing, she's great. But as you grow and scale and have more members and more students and more equipment and more things, how can you scale the operations when you don't have the budget for a 12-person team? So, sound familiar, right? Insert a system and also partnerships. So again, now, as we're able to kind of look at the NC State journey, we've got the community, which again, they also already had, and this credit to Haley and team, they were building a reputation on campus for being this really cool space, being this really cool center, really growing the entrepreneurship brand. They had the partnerships with the co-working spaces, and they had the automations and analytics with the tools, which allowed them to grow into the Garage 2.0, which we'll take a look at, which is a full-on 25,000 square foot, again, co-working facility. Now, Raleigh Founded actually operates this space for NC State. So when we talk about partnership, they actually took the co-working space and had the co-working space operators come on campus and help them run that space. So there's a lot of things that you could do to help facilitate that. And again, now NC State's got a lot of different things, and we've got full NC State entrepreneurship proper instead of sort of the entrepreneurship initiative. So, circling back to the 3 keys. So first, community. So when we talk about community, it does start with people. So with this here is us last week in DC, handing out the Community Manager Awards. You can see here, I'll get out of the screen, there's a whole kind of ingredients list of what makes a good community manager. And I think one thing that I want to stress is, as much as software and everything else is great, it starts with having good people. And you gotta have a good manager, you gotta have a good person in your community that's really building and championing what you're doing. So for us, that was Jess and Haley, and without these people, you can't really do anything, right? So when we talk about community and culture, it starts with people first, and then having those events and those programming so that you can get more people exposed to what you're doing. Bullet 2, the analytics and the automation. So again, how can you measure ROI? What are your keys for success, right? How can you demonstrate to your donors that people are using these resources? And how can you track that, right? And that's where software comes into play. So whatever you're using, whether it be Google Calendar, whether it be Coworks, whether it be HubSpot or Salesforce, you've got to be thinking about things from a data-driven perspective, because once you're able to track your usage, track your interest, that's when you're going to be able to get people excited about what you're doing. But when you do that, you got to make sure that the experience works, right? You can't just put people in 25 different softwares, 25 different systems, because that's when they fall off, they don't want to log in, they don't want to track. You got to make it seamless and easy to use. Any questions so far? So, and again, this is kind of what we do, but really, again, the point here is make it easy to use. So let's fast forward to today. These are some of our customers that we have today. And so all of these, the key themes here is that all of these universities are partnering with the co-working spaces. So we got Central Community College out in Nebraska, UNC Chapel Hill, USC, and all of these centers are able to grow and scale by finding these partnerships with the associated local co-working brands. These also happen to be Coworks customers, so we're able to help them on the data side as well. A couple other interesting stats that we found. These are some of the top universities, and we found that one common theme with these universities is that all of them have, 4 of the top 5 of these have at least one co-working space within 2 miles of the campus. So again, I think we're really finding this merger between co-working and entrepreneur centers in these communities. So, some takeaways. We have the 3 pillars. Community. So, building an engaged community via events, programming, people, space, data and analytics. So, streamlining all those operations using some kind of platform, tracking that data points to get ROI, and then partnering with your local co-working space, your innovation studio, your accelerator for content and operations. And again, the 3 key takeaways, just so that we can drive that into your memory. So again, there's a few ways. If you don't have a physical space, maybe you go to your local co-working space and you take space there, and that's your sort of prototype space. If you do have a physical space, maybe you partner with them to come on campus to help you with the content and the programming, right? There's different levels, different challenges that you're going to face as you go. But the key message here is you are the co-working space on your campus. You are the innovation hub. And these are sort of the keys that you can have to kind of get there and really be the co-working space of your campus. That's it. Thank you. Questions? Thoughts, comments?
Yeah, so we are running a community co-working space and the program at the same time. So I'm from Davidson College, so we're doing both of those things in one. You know, one of the things that's been hard from a data and automation perspective is that because we have community members in our CRM and platforms that we're using now, you know, the college doesn't want us to sort of muddy their fundraising CRM platforms and what have you. So we ended up having to, or we're about to, build all of these different API connections and sharing data back and forth, and then fundraising is coming to us and being like, hey, well, your co-working members look like really interesting fundraising for, you know, for prospects. So I'm just curious, I don't know if anybody is in the room is doing that as well, but there's some interesting challenges with sharing data across all of those systems, what the policy should be, to what extent are the, you know, co-working members there because of the affiliation with the college, and, you know, kind of vice versa. So.
Yeah, that's an interesting, so if I can understand your question, it's kind of how do you control sort of the, well, I guess who owns the data, first of all? Where does that data kind of belong when you're talking about partnerships? We're looking at the co-working space members, we're looking at sort of the university members, and how are you sort of tracking them as they go across those journeys, right?
Yeah, because one big thing, so before I came back to Davidson, I'm a groupie, I'm an alum, all that, but still 15 years in software, product development and other things, right? So I'm kind of coming to it saying, I know we need to build data-driven customer journeys and being able to track that, right? So that's such, if somebody from the community comes in, raises their hand, they're not an alum, no affiliation with the college, but says, I want to be a mentor. And then, you know, after a great experience, they're like, great, I want to be a co-working member.
Right.
And then they take a class with us, and then they, you know, give funding for a seed capital or something, for a pitch competition or something like that in the future. What I'm trying to sort of do is concatenate all of this different data and these systems of record across the campus, across the data that we own as the co-working center as well, but we are part of the college. The college owns our physical building, but we have to be financially self-sustaining as well. So there's just kind of multiple layers of trying to figure out what is, again, from a cultural perspective, what's appropriate, and engaging those co-working members and getting them to be part of the college, and then using that data in appropriate ways to further everyone's mission.
Yeah, that's an interesting challenge. I think with software, making them sort of communicate is always kind of the tricky part, right? If we flip back to the duct tape piece.
Yeah, I mean, it's that, but then it's like 250 different enterprise software tools across the campus that, you know, some of that data lives in all these different places. And I know some of the data that we have could also enrich what the college is looking for too, you know, so.
Yeah, and I think that's where it's important to, at least within your piece of the puzzle, have at least a source of truth that you guys follow, whether it's part of what the university tool sets already have, and to your point, you're probably gonna have to speak to those no matter what.
Yeah.
Even if it's just pulling reports out and uploading them back into those systems. Mm-hmm. But I think you're absolutely right, and I think having it, that's kind of where you kind of get lost in the next step of scaling is figuring out where to pull the data from and how to make sense of it. So yeah, my main advice would just be pick just in your center a source of truth, even if you know it's not gonna talk to everything else, so that as you're sort of collaborating with the different spaces and with the university itself, you can at least say, well, this is our truth, and we're gonna get updates on people as they graduate from maybe this tool, or we're gonna get their, you know, university records from this tool. Integrations can be tough, but yeah, trying to just centralize that within your space as much as possible, because otherwise you're just compounding the, the fragmentation.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, it's a good question.
I have a question about, sorry, it's possibly a dumb question, but
No dumb questions.
It's just around those partnerships between university spaces and the co-working spaces.
Yeah.
Just on a budget budget level.
Yeah.
So-
Talking about money now.
Like, I love the idea, but I'm just wondering, like, do you have like a kind of a level of scale of like what's involved in like monetarily in creating those collaborations, and like, because obviously it's very expensive to run a co-working space.
It is.
And we're a university, so I mean I'm a university in the UK, so I'm poorer. Yeah, so it's just like, what do you have a scale of like what kind of costs are involved in doing that? Or like, do you have special arrangements between the two, which means that it comes down?
Yeah, so really the latter, I don't have exact numbers because it just varies so much. And Haley, if you have any opinions, definitely let me know. But so I can tell you just on this screen, there's a few, all of these are actually different arrangements. So let's take South Carolina. GrowCo is a private co-working space, and they own that. Well, I don't know if they own the building, but it's their lease, it's their kind of property. USC is coming in and putting money into their space. In exchange, GrowCo's kind of carved out the University of South Carolina's Entrepreneur Center in GrowCo. And that allowed them to basically not have to have that space on campus and do the build out cost on campus. The co-working space handled a lot of that build out and a lot of that design and a lot of that management, and they kind of get that center that way. In the case of the Nickel State, I want to say it's kind of different. They own the real estate, and they brought in a co-working entity to kind of help operate and manage it, but they've actually leased it to the co-working space operator. So the co-working space operator pays them rent because it's their building.
That's really interesting.
And but now these guys are actually doing the recruiting, they're filling out all the desks and all the offices, and they charge all the startups all the money. So now this allows them, so all they have to do is say, please pay your rent on time. And then these guys actually are the ones who have to try to make it actually make money.
Wow. Yeah, so it's actually very much not one size fits all.
100%. All right. Yeah, here and then here.
Question. I loved your journey, how you shared where you came from. So
Thank you, yeah.
So Coworks, you own that, that's your private entity, or are you a nonprofit?
Yes, it's a private company.
Okay,
And,
private.
yeah,
Are you structured as a nonprofit?
we are not, no.
Okay. So do you partner with NC State then, or? Are
Yes, so they're-
connected? Are you correlated still, or?
I mean, only as they're a customer of Coworks now,
Okay.
so they use the platform to manage the space.
Okay.
And of course, I'm an alumni, so
Right.
I'm
There's
affiliated
some
in that way. So,
Great.
but yeah, good question. Over here?
So I have actual software questions. Should I take that offline, or is that okay within this context?
Yeah, let's hear it. I may just defer it because we'll see what we'll see how deep we go.
So I need to track data, but not just for the co-work space itself. So I need to track metrics. So for example, we are part of a project called Ascend. It's funded by JP Morgan to help scale Black and Hispanic businesses.
That's awesome.
And so at the end of
Where
the year,
are you based?
I'm at Hofstra University in the suburbs of New York City,
Cool.
Long Island.
Cool.
So at the end of the year, though, JP Morgan, as any good bank, has a whole list of things that they want to know. How many jobs, how many entrepreneurs,
Right, where's the data? Yeah.
employees,
Yeah.
Their metrics are how many companies did you get to 1, 5, and 10 million? You tell me. So can your software also help us track these non-kind of code space related metrics, but are metrics that we have to provide to all of our funders?
Yeah, so that's a really good question, and we kind of blazed over all this stuff, but part of, I think, those synergies is the co-working spaces that we work with actually had the same issue. Like, they wanted community impact reports, because a lot of co-working spaces are actually funded by the city, which is another thing, by the way, that university-city partnerships, but the co-working spaces a lot of them have found, like, hey, they go to the city and say, we're gonna open up this space, it's gonna bring these startups and businesses into your community, they're gonna pay tax dollars, please give us money to help us build it out. And a lot of times they do. But then they come calling and saying, can you please give us the reporting, or somewhere on there, on why that whatever build out money we gave you was worth it, right? So to answer your question, yes, but everybody wants a different set of data. So it's not a one size fit all as far as you just mentioned, like which companies have gotten funded and this, that, and the other. So yes, I think again, we do have some baseline stuff on how many organizations have come through the program and their team size and how they've increased. We've got a billing component, so we can do some of that stuff, but it does just depend. And I think again, back to the question over here, if you have at least a source of truth, now you're not trying to stitch together 50 things. Like at least now you've got at least your core, and then you might have to jump over here to get this one piece, and you might have to jump over here to get this one piece, but it's really hard to automate that. So, but yes, sort of.
So
You're about out of time.
All right, maybe one more question, and then I know you guys got to go. We're a little bit over, so thank you so much for everybody's attention. I'll take a few more for whoever can stay. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed it.